The pressure was unbelievable. Words cannot describe the amount of pressure that existed, and it became the number one headwind for the company.
So that's Liban Mohammed. He used to serve on TikTok's congressional affairs team. So now he's running for Congress in Utah. Ryan Grimm interviewed him. We're gonna come to Ryan in a second. But during the interview, Mohammed explained that what it was like working at TikTok after October 7th and how much pro-Zionist pressure there was at the company. And this is before the Zionists even bought it. Watch.
In my job at TikTok, we're getting all these inquiries from different elected officials, pro-Israeli or lobbying organizations, think of ADL and all of those. The pressure was unbelievable. Words cannot describe the amount of pressure that existed, and it became the number one headwind for the company that could result in the lack of its existence in the largest consumer market in the entire world. We were getting inbound inquiries, and this is public information. You could see a lot of these letters online. Every few days, every other day, from pro-Israeli lobbying organizations, from pro-Israel perspective legislators, and the company was just being inundated.
So I'm gonna argue in a minute that this is among the ways that Israel completely controls our national, what we used to call mainstream media. And so here's basically a whistleblower telling you how it works on the inside. In a minute, we're gonna get to Politico, where the person who runs the entire company came in to say that you must support Israel. It is not optional in a news organization. But Liban Mohammed actually had more to say on this, and I want to go to Ryan and get his thoughts on it. But it was not just in these recent years that this pressure existed. Let's watch.
This experience actually made me understand exactly how this influence really works. It's more than money. It's persistence. It's the sophistication behind their lobbying efforts. And they make you feel like you're in a bubble, that their perspective is the only perspective that exists because of the volume that you're dealing with. And everybody knows in the company what it is, the pressure that exists. And you have to feel like you're walking on eggshells because you know at the end of the day that the ultimate purpose of this business, like any other business, is to make profit. And the biggest risk to risk profit at the current moment is the pro-Israel perspective threatening to participate in the efforts to ban the platform.
So Ryan, you did the interview, and as I watched it, I thought, yeah, this is exactly what we theorized, and here's a brother telling us that that's exactly what happens internally. Now, I'm gonna use harsh words, you can use any words you like, but I think that these are a bunch of thugs who act like a Gestapo within the media, and if anyone is critical of Israel, they put a world of pressure on them. And in this case, the pressure was, we're gonna destroy your company. We're gonna make you sell it, okay? And you're gonna have to sell it at a loss, way less than you would have sold it otherwise. Not at a loss, but at a greatly reduced price. And we're gonna damage you as much as we possibly can for not serving as a propaganda unit for Israel. And then they threaten everybody inside the building. This is the thuggish behavior that the brown shirts did when they were around. And then they escalated past that and got to physical violence. But this is not just about TikTok. They do this at every media organization, don't they?
What's ironic too is that it's not even criticism of Israel. It wasn't like people talking to camera and like giving their like essay response for like why they think what Israel was doing in Gaza was wrong. It wasn't like that wasn't it. You saw it unfold. What people saw, in some ways, sort of for the first time, they were able to make a person-to-person connection with people in Gaza. And they were then able to watch Israel slaughter them and their families. And it broke through all of the propaganda because you see, like, these are real people just trying to live their lives. And they're being, driven out of their homes, bombed out of their homes, they're being starved and being shot. And so it wasn't that they objected to like the words or the arguments that were being made even. It wasn't about even necessarily speech. It was just, here's the firsthand evidence of what's happening, that mainstream media has never shown you before. Except when they do, it changes things. Like if you remember, I mean, I don't remember, but 1982, when Israel's invading Lebanon, there were all these images of Lebanese civilians slaughtered by the Israelis, and Ronald Reagan called up, I think it was Menachem Begin at the time, and said, "It looks like the Holocaust. You need to stop. It's on the front pages of all the papers." So whether it's TikTok or the front page of the papers, when those images break through, that's when things change. And so they have to go directly after the images. And so and we have public comments from the House sponsor, from Mitt Romney over in the Senate and others saying they have been trying to get TikTok, basically taken over by a US company for years, but only succeeded because of October 7th, because the Israel lobby then came in and helped kind of push it over the top, because they're at something of a stalemate with the Chinese-run company up until then. But yeah, and now the Ellisons, who, Larry Ellison has given what, 17 some million dollars plus to the Friends of the IDF nonprofit, speaks about his devotion to Israel repeatedly. They are now going to own and control, TikTok, CNN, CBS News, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and a long list of media companies you've heard of that I can't even think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Look, one of the biggest problems with political media right now isn't just bias. It's how quickly the same story gets spun into two completely different realities depending on who's telling it. That's why I recommend Ground News. It's a website and app that pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum so you can compare how the same story is being covered, who's covering it, and what kind of narrative they're pushing. Take this story about Pete Hegseth refusing to rule out US troops on the ground in Iran. On Ground News, you can immediately see how differently outlets frame that same development. The Daily Signal downplays the danger by stressing that this isn't Iraq and that the war won't be endless. NBC, meanwhile, focuses on the key fact that Hegseth would not rule out American boots on the ground in Iran. Same story, two completely different realities. And Ground News makes that obvious right away. You can compare headlines side by side, see the bias distribution of the coverage, check the factuality ratings of the sources, and even see who owns the outlets behind the reporting. That matters because once you understand how stories are being framed, you start to see how public consent gets manufactured. Ground News also has a blind spot feed that highlights stories that one side of the political spectrum is barely covering. So you're not just trapped inside the version of the world your algorithm wants to feed you. If you're tired of being fed somebody else's narrative, I genuinely recommend Ground News. Go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code. Using our link gets you 40% off Ground News Vantage plan, and you can also gift a subscription directly through Ground News.
Imagine trying to then come to them with any sort of pitch that's remotely even skeptical of Israel at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I now realize that Israel has been, killing their neighbors and trying to take their land for a long, long time. And I didn't know that. And partly because I lived in their bubble. I lived in the mainstream media bubble, and I thought Israel, was a normal country and that they were the victims and all this stuff. I mean, we all got brainwashed, right? So now, just today, to your point about us being able to see it with our own eyes, there was a guy who was taking care of a lot of the cats in Gaza, and he'd feed them every day, even though they're, halfway starving themselves. The humans are, and Israel murdered him, and the cats won't leave his side. And so there's heartbreaking video after video, picture after picture. So a picture today online of an IDF soldier masturbating at the Gaza destruction. I mean, it's like a Nazi soldier masturbating in front of Auschwitz. These are disgusting, sick tactics that Israel uses. They're like, and the only way that they ever got away with it was overwhelming propaganda. That is why they tried to control our media here in America, so you wouldn't see their war crimes that they apparently have been doing decade after decade after decade. Obviously, to the poor Palestinians who've been suffering under their oppressive, fascist, dictatorial rule in West Bank and Gaza Strip, and they hate new media for bursting the bubble that they had created here in America. But if you're not convinced yet, I've got to tell you the story of what happened at Politico. So Politico is an establishment publication to begin with, very, very pro-Israel to begin with. But some of their reporters recently wrote a memo to their executives there saying, hey, listen, we've got to cover the Iran war fairly. And so can we please be honest? Are we allowed to be honest about the Iran war? So not only did they bring a guy who's the head of Politico, they brought in the big cat. Axel Springer, a German company, owns Politico, and they own a lot of media, which I'll tell you about in a second. And in fact, they try to invest in us, and that's an interesting story. I'll tell you that in a second. So they bring in their CEO, Matthias Döpfner. So what's Döpfner's situation? What did he have to tell them? Is he going to take it seriously? Yeah, guys, of course, we're in the news business. Here's Jewish Insider saying that Döpfner exhorted Europe to stand with the United States and Israel in their war with Iran, and said that the European aid to Palestinians helped fund terrorists, while arguing that the continent was on the wrong side of history in pausing assistance to Israel. So there's no question so that's an op-ed from the CEO of Axel Springer, and he's saying deep into the genocide now and all the wars that they've started. Israel's the victim, and you must report it that way. So he comes in and does this presentation where he says to the Politico reporters, shut up and serve Israel. But let me give you the direct quotes from Jewish Insider, you make up your own mind. If you're saying, he says to the Politico staff, if you're saying that one should not say that the Iranian leadership, the mullahs, are aggressors, you may be right. The wording is more of a euphemism. We should rather say they're terrorists or they are mass murderers. So they said, well, the reporters are asking, but didn't we attack Iran, us and Israel? They didn't attack us, so we were the aggressors. And he's like, no, shut up and write that they are mass murderers and everyone should hate them and it's their fault, and just say that they started the war. Who cares? Who cares? Serve Israel. Your job is not to do news at Politico. Your job is to do Israeli propaganda. But wait, he's not anywhere near done. That would be more appropriate, he said, given the kind of spread of terrorism with Iranian proxies from Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthi, and other terrorist organizations. I think to a position that is an aggressor is a mild version of what it is. These two facts, he says, that the Iranians are working on the nuclear bomb and that they are the aggressors for decades, are so obvious, so proven for many times. They're almost, it's like saying America is the biggest democracy in the world. I don't have to prove that. First of all, America is not the biggest democracy in the world, India is. But it doesn't matter, he already told you, we're not doing news at Politico, we're not doing news at any Axel Springer media organization. In fact, one of their 5 founding principles is that they must serve Israel. That is amazing. That's in their actual corporate guidelines. They say, no, we must be pro-Zionist. You are not to do news. You are to do propaganda. They've been working on their nuclear program for decades. Then how come they didn't have a nuke? Netanyahu's been telling us for 30, 40 years that they were about to have a nuke tomorrow, they're gonna have it next week. And Matthias has been lying the whole time, they're about to have a nuke, they're about to have, and he's like, hey, reporters, shut up and lie. Say they're about to have a nuke, but didn't we destroy their nuclear facilities? Shut up, do not do news. Thank you for letting us know, I'm not done. If the Green Party in England, he says, is saying Zionism is racism, I just want to make it very clear that we think Zionism is, and that is the official definition, Israel's right of self-determination and of its right to exist as a safe haven for Jews who have almost been extinct during the Holocaust. The Holocaust happened, it was terrible, there's no question they were victims back then, but we're not talking about the 1940s, we're talking about today where Israel is much stronger and they're the ones doing war crimes. It doesn't matter if you don't support Zionism, you're out, okay? In fact, just to be clear, they completed the threat. He says, since Israel's right to exist in Zionism is one of the 5 core company values, which is just stunning. I mean, it's stunning for any company, let alone a news company. Anyway, he says, if that is something that somebody wants to question, then we are really reaching the very fundamental principles of our values. And that then may lead simply to the decision that because we are very transparent about it, it is then an individual decision whether Axel Springer and somebody who has so fundamentally different beliefs is really a good fit. So you're not a good fit here if you won't do Israeli propaganda. But don't worry, Israel doesn't control our media. That's a trope. That's a trope. Okay, that concept of a trope is a made up concept to protect Israel, okay? So they could pretend that everything is a trope. You're not allowed to say it, you're not allowed to say, I'm saying it because it is absolutely true, because they're saying it, I'm not done yet. Dorfner's comments received no pushback and even some tacit backing from political leaders who participated in the meeting. Of course, and by the way, this is Jewish Insider writing it. And they're like, attaboy, but don't you dare. And later in the article, they're like, now, of course, this is a terrible trope to say that Jews control the media. And yeah, these Jews control the media. Look at your own stupid article. It isn't Jewish people. 63% of Jewish Americans are against the Netanyahu government. It is maniacal, pro-Israel first lunatics, a bunch of terrorist sympathizers that have taken over our government. Okay, so who's this Matthias Dopfner guy anyway? He says, but I know that some of you may say, as you take stock, that doesn't sit right, and it doesn't feel like this is something that'll make you happy. I'm a very firm believer that we do our best work here where we are happy, where we feel fulfilled, where we feel aligned with the organization that we work for. Brother, we got it. You already told them they're gonna get fired if they don't do Israeli propaganda, but they just keep piling on, right? Now, what has he done in the past? Get a load of this. This is also, ironically, from an earlier article from Politico. Israeli President Isaac Herzog presented the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor to Axel Springer's CEO, Matthias Dopfner, and casino mogul and GOP mega donor, Miriam Adelson, on Wednesday. He got the Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor because he's done such a great job of lying to Germans, to Americans, to everyone on behalf of Israel and hiding all of their crimes while pretending to do news. The honor, he said, Dopfner said, is the most meaningful, the most emotional award I have ever received in my life. I did propaganda so well. I helped Israel control the media while we pretend that they don't. Oh, I get so emotional over it. And he said, our support for Israel and our fight against anti-Semitism is not something we would ever trade for anything. Our support for Israel is not something we would trade for anything, he says. That's not me saying it, that's him saying it. So is he an anti-Semite? Is he doing the trope? Because he's literally saying over anything, including the news, no. Our support for Israel, more important than the news, more important than anything, okay? So this is nonsense. By the way, I gotta correct myself. The guy that we said, hey, if you don't feel good and not a good fit. First one was Matthias Dopfner. The second one was the CEO of Politico, the new CEO of Politico, Greenberger. And he said, yeah, you better get the hell out of here if you don't support Israel. Hey, if you don't feel comfortable, maybe you should go get a job at a real news organization. Didn't you know you were signing up for corporate and foreign government propaganda? It's Politico. Ryan, here, actually one last thing, Ryan, let me read you the list, because you read basically Ellison's list of the Paramount and CBS and Free Press, CNN, HBO Max, TBS, TNT, let alone all the others. So that's who Larry and David Ellison are buying. But Axel Springer also has Business Insider, Morning Brew, Politico, Politico Europe, Upday. And those are the ones that affect us and are in English. They also have The Build and so many other publications throughout the country. Well, if this isn't Israel at least trying to control our media, what is it?
Yeah, and obviously Germany deals with an enormous amount of appropriate guilt for carrying out the Holocaust. But one way that they've kind of metabolized it is to displace it over into this like unapologetic, unquestioning support for whatever Israel does. And lost in that is the point that you made, that huge numbers, at least Jewish Americans, are extremely hostile to what the Israeli government is doing. And conflating those two is, according to significant numbers of like definitions of anti-Semitism, is definitionally anti-Semitic. So Germany obviously is quite a unique case there. I remember when Axel Springer bought Politico. I forget the year that was, many years ago at this point. But I remember friends who were still there saying, we got this bizarre form that says we have to sign that we support Israel, which is, as for a reporter, it's a curious question because, okay, he says it is unquestionable that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon. Well, in fact, that's an empirical question. Is Iran pursuing a nuclear weapon or not? Is an empirical question that journalists are supposed to use sources and documents to answer. But if Israel says that they are, and you as a journalistic institution are mandated to support Israel, then circularly, you just have to report that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon, whether they're pursuing one or not. And that's just on that one example. But that thing that you read about them being mass murderers rather than aggressors, yeah, that was like a compromise from him, because he was saying, well, it's obvious that they're the aggressors in this war, and some of the reporters are like, well, hold on a second. Say what you want about whatever, but like, we were alive in February. Israel and the United States bombed Iran. There were negotiations going on. They bombed Iran. They bombed a girls' school. We saw that happen. Iran responded. Like, that is the sequence of events. You cannot disrupt the time-space continuum here. So it was sort of like him backing down a little bit. Okay, fine. Aggressors, fine. They were not the aggressors, but they've been aggressors for decades, and they're terrorists and mass murderers. So call them that. And you called him a liar. He seems to me like the kind of guy who's just been saying this stuff for decades now and would pass a lie detector test with it. That it's just, but who knows? And also, who cares? It doesn't matter. But yeah, it's bleak, and with the increasing amount of consolidation, it's just getting bleaker.
No, that's a fair point, Ryan, because a lot of these guys are zombies. They believe they drank their own Kool-Aid, and I've had to deal with them in the business world, and they truly believe it. So Axel Springer came here many years ago, and we did an investment back in 2017. We talked to a lot of people, and it sounded, they're like, oh my God, your business looks perfect. We're looking into digital media. You guys are the largest at the time, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, poof, we don't hear from them. So I don't know why they didn't go in that direction. There could be 1,000 different reasons. Was it because of this? Maybe they saw one of our shows and they're like, oh, they will not do propaganda for Israel. This is an unacceptable show, right? And then recently in another round, we talked to a company related to the Ellisons, and the very first question they asked me was about Israel. So they're not subtle. And then those same exact people, if you told them Israel's trying to control our media, they're like, anti-Semite. Now that's why we're not giving you any money, because you won't serve Israel. Well, which one is it, brother? Right? So, okay, last thing, Ryan. For the rest of the country, this seems obvious. Like, this is not close, it's not subtle. We just, to your point, we just saw them with our own eyes by half of American media and say that it will serve Israel. And they said it out loud, right? So is it, but if you go to Washington, my experience, and I'm curious about yours because you're there a lot more often, is no, that is an outrageous thing to say. Anyone who says that Israel's trying to control our media should be canceled and should be fired immediately, which ironically kind of proves our point. But yeah, what's your experience? Is anybody in Washington getting this, or are they still in the same bubble as Matthias?
No, I think in Washington, I think they would say, you can't say control. That's outrageous. But I think they would be like, you know what? Spending enormous amounts of money to heavily influence. Yeah, gonna let you say that. And you can concede that too. It's like, it's complete control. Hey, CBS News is gonna do stories critical of Israel sometimes. Even today's CBS News, they're gonna get some out. So I think that's in Washington today. That's where you're gonna get the quibble, is control. But I think in general, like, there's a major acknowledgement that that Israeli influence and obviously the influence of the Ellisons, who are enormous supporters, like not just run-of-the-mill supporters of Israel, but like 0.1 percentile supporters of Israel, are increasingly they themselves in control of huge swaths of the media.
Yeah, it's not subtle. And anyone claiming it's a trope can kiss my ass. It's definitely control. It's not slight influence around the edges when you buy the whole damn company and then you tell the reporters they're not allowed to criticize Israel. That's called control. The only people saying it's not control are either cowards or liars, in my opinion, because they don't want to get fired. They're like, well, I mean, it's not control. It's not control. I'm so no, please don't fire me. You don't control me. You don't control me. I think that kind of proves our case. Okay, we gotta go. Ryan, you're awesome. Everybody check out Drop Site News.
Thank you, sir.
And you know what? The one thing Drop Site News and Young Turks share, well, we share a lot of things, but the most important one is we're uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable, controlled by, our readers can't even control us.
That's right. I mean, we defied our own viewers, and everybody saw it, right? So at least some portion of our viewers, and they're like, "Oh, you better get back in line." No, we don't get back in line. We do the news, and we're honest with people, no matter what. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.